Hello.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I just heard like a Pavlovian sound.
Come here.
Did
Oh,
I?
it's the best sound.
Did I hear this?
Okay, hold on.
Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 57 of From the Van. It's a podcast from my van where I have conversations with people who have relationships with residential vehicles. I'm your host, Marty Benson, and today's episode features Megan Cable. Megan has been on the podcast before. She's a good friend of ours, and she has been self-isolating, boondocking in her Sprinter for the last 6 weeks. She's been alone out in public lands in the Southwest, and she's doing surprisingly well. She seems to be in very good spirits, and I think she's been sort of decompressing by riding bicycles around. But we had a great conversation with her about the experience of living in the van during this, especially considering that she's a completely 100% solo, except for going into town for groceries every once in a while. We also talked about what this might mean for the political and social environments for van lifing into the future. You know, some things are going to change short term, some are going to change long term, and some may change permanently. And so we sort of try to speculate and figure out, estimate what's going to happen. We had a really good conversation with her. It's really good to catch up with some old friends, and I hope you enjoy the conversation. This is episode 57 of From the Van featuring Megan Cable.
How are you? Where are you?
I'm in southern Utah.
Still good.
Yeah, I've been sheltering in place here for the last 6 weeks.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
Are you like 100% totally alone?
Yes.
Wow. How's that?
Hi, Colleen. It's actually been way better than I would have expected. I continue to keep thinking I'm just gonna go crazy, and I
Yeah.
still just find another week went by, and I'm still doing okay.
Uh-huh.
So I am starting to think more longer term about what that looks like, but it's
Right.
actually been pretty good so far. Yeah.
Crazy.
How are you?
Has anybody bothered you?
No, I have not been bothered. I really just haven't I go into town once a week to get groceries and stuff, and other than that, I don't really come into contact with anyone
Yeah.
other than on trails. Kind of seeing people from a distance. Everyone just kind of seems to keep their distance and keep moving, but I haven't been bothered.
Good.
I think I'm finally getting over the fear of being bothered, just because I feel like I was hearing a lot of stories from people over the last several weeks of just people being bothered, across the country, license plates that don't match the state they're in, etc. And it definitely had me scared of just feeling like I am somewhere where I shouldn't be, and that I need to keep under wraps, keep it a secret wherever I am.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm finally starting to get over that. I think that just comes with the confidence that I made the right decision to just stay where I'm at. I'm being safe. There's literally nothing I could do that would keep me more safe by going anywhere else. So
Yeah. That's cool. Good. Are you on BLM land? I won't ask specifically where you are, but
yeah, I'm on public land.
okay.
Yeah. There's kind of been two places that I've gone between, but mostly just kind of staying in one spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rad. And it's freaking gorgeous out there. I told you we have friends who live in southern Utah, and we've been to visit them a few times, and it's just unbelievable. Even outside of Zion and stuff, just the countryside there is gorgeous.
Yeah, just the red rocks everywhere. And I definitely feel really fortunate that it's just kind of where I happened to be when it all started to go down, and I had the ability to just stay here. And being outside has definitely been what saved me, being able to be on bike trails and go walk around and get fresh air. So I feel pretty lucky, but yeah, it's not a bad place to be.
Yeah. Wow. I'm in one way I'm like really jealous of you because we're in this very nice, boring ass suburban neighborhood, you know?
Yeah.
We're parked in front of Colette's mom's house in her driveway. And a wonderful thing is we have access to a shower and a shitter, but like
Yeah.
but it's we're not alone and we're going crazy. And so the other part of me is like, how are you even doing that? Just like not seeing anybody.
I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty used to being alone,
Yeah.
so it doesn't feel totally different. I think it's like the little things of like not being in a coffee shop and just like having really normal interactions with like people, like small touches on a daily basis that really feels like it's rocked my normal way more. I definitely had like a bunch of plans over the last month that got canceled with other people, which is a big bummer. So I think I'm trying to figure out how to like in May see people and like what that looks like and what that means. And does that mean maybe going to one place and just like staying there and like spending time with that person for a month, or trying to work through all of that? Like I'm hoping by the end of April I will have some in-person contact with friends of
Yeah.
some sort. Yeah.
I feel like that's totally reasonable to do, especially since you've been like perfectly isolated for 6 weeks. I would almost worry
Yeah.
more about somebody giving something to you at this point, right?
Yeah, I know. So my original plans after this were to go back to Reno and see some family. But my cousin that lives there is a nurse and she works on the positive, like COVID positive floor in Reno at the hospital. So she's like, you might not want to come here just because there's a higher risk of you getting it than anything else, you know? So that
Yeah.
definitely kind of just made me rethink like that plan of like, yeah, I am a lot safer away from there. And, you know, she comes in contact with it every day. I don't. But yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting to start to think about how everyone's going to start to travel again, you know, like it's not going to be a switch that we turn off and like this is going to go away and everything's going to go back to normal. So just like, what does that mean for us and what does that mean for normal people? And, you know, understanding how we can be responsible and safe and still get back to our lives in some capacity. Like that's definitely going to look different, but like we got to figure it out. Like we're smart enough country to be able to like figure out how to be safe and go about our lives still.
Yeah, that's one of I was talking on Instagram today to my buddy Dan, who just before this happened moved to San Francisco, which I think they have it pretty well under control now. But
Mm-hmm.
what I've been so sad about is that, you know, we love being out in the woods and stuff, but we're also like city people. Like the two of us love talking to strangers and being in that bustle of like a diverse throngs of diverse like people from diverse backgrounds all passing and interacting with each other. And I just like, I don't know, we're certainly not getting back to that anytime soon,
Yeah.
you know? Like where you go to the bar and sit right next to somebody you've never seen before and start up a
A
conversation.
bunch of strangers. Yeah.
Yeah. A guy, a guy I was in, so it's just Patty, Colette's mom, and Colette and me and Spin here. And so that's like most of our conversations. I have been reaching out and talking to people at a distance that I went to college with a million years ago and that sort of thing, just to sort of check in and see what's going on. And it's opened my eyes to keeping in touch via technology a little bit more. But yesterday I was in the beer aisle and there was this couple shopping and I clearly knew what I was looking for. And this dude picks up this 6-pack and he's like, "Hey, have you had this?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm sort of staying away from hazies." And he's like, "Oh, but the bitterness of an IPA bothers me." And I was like, "Oh, then get that, because that's a great choice." And when he walked away, I was like, I just talked to a person.
It was so nice. Yeah, like the grocery counter clerk is literally the only person I've talked to probably in the last 4 weeks.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's also different. Like, I've also have had the chance to connect like on Zoom and FaceTime with like friends and family more than ever before. And like, I'm used to being on my own, and they're not used to being home all the time. So like, they have way more time to like get on the phone and chat or to connect. And this feels very unusual to them. So it's kind of a nice, I guess it's nice for me, for them to have more time and be like, want to chat and want to check in more than usual.
Yeah. I was just about to ask about the weather, but I've been out there at this time of year before. And what occurs to me is that you're going to have to move in May just
It'll
to
be too hot.
from melting, right?
Yeah, I know it's been like perfect right now. There's days like today where it's been all over the place. This morning I was like outside in a dress sweating, and then it started pouring rain, and now it's like kind of cooler and cloudy, but like overall it's been like in the 70s during the day and just like really perfect. So
Brad.
I've been thinking about how I could foresee myself making like an annual trip out here in like March forever now. Like March and April are just like perfect.
Yeah.
But yeah, it will start to warm up and it'll start to get more unbearable.
Yeah, real damn hot.
Mm-hmm.
What's your I don't know if I ever asked you this before, but what's your connectivity situation out there?
I have a mobile hotspot.
Okay.
So I've definitely been like testing the limits of that, and because I mean, I work full time, but usually I work from coffee shops, like at least 70% of the time, probably on just like public networks because my data is limited. So I've been using my hotspot and it's been working totally fine. So between the mobile hotspot I have and hotspotting off my phone for a month, I can pretty much be fine on the data that I have between those. So that's been working out pretty well. The first, like right at the beginning when I was out here, I was like almost out of data and had like an annoying day where just like nothing was working. But I think because a lot of the carriers have kind of increased their data limits during this time for most of the plans, like I don't think they're throttling people as quickly. I think that might be part of why I've been able to do it without an issue.
Yeah, I didn't realize they were doing that.
Some carriers have announced that like basically they've increased the amount of data you have on your plan, or like unlimited, during this time.
Cool. So I just take it from social media that you've been doing a whole bunch of mountain biking.
Yeah.
What's up with that? That seems like a great place to do it, and I haven't done it there at all.
Yeah, it's kind of why I came out here in the first place. I bought a bike when I was in San Diego, and just with the hopes of like this spring and summer mountain biking a bunch and hopefully trying to get better at it and just enjoy it. And so that's kind of why I came out here, because I just knew there was a lot of mountain biking in the area. And my original plan was to kind of go all over Utah and Arizona in the months of March and April. And I now will have spent the whole 2 months in the same spot, but it's kind of, there's a bunch of great trails here also. So I've mostly honestly been riding the same trail, which is just the one I'm like parked right next to. And the reason I've moved a few times is to just get access to different trails.
Okay, find some wood and knock on it real quick. Okay.
That's my thing.
I know she's gonna tell me to do it in a second anyway. She would have been like, Marty, but I have to ask this question.
You're preemptive.
Do you have a plan if you take a weird spill?
Yeah, I definitely thought about it, just like with everything going on. I mean, when I first got to this area and decided to stay, I looked up all of the local healthcare, like, you know, I'm staying up with local media, or not local news, on just like what's going on with the COVID situation, but just also like what hospital or what number I would call if anything happened. And that's generally like a good thing to do anywhere you're at if you're like doing anything like mountain biking or that's dangerous. Definitely made me way more aware of it here. And I'm such like a conservative mountain biker. I'm not like going and doing crazy things. Like it's really just like out riding a trail, and like the worst thing that's going to happen is I'm going to get a flat tire and I'm going to have to walk back 6 miles. Like I'm really not doing anything where I feel like I'm putting myself in danger like that.
Right.
Obviously shit happens, but
yeah. So I haven't even looked into this, but it just occurred to me. So my friends that live out there, the woman is a friend of mine that I used to live with in San Diego. They're both biologists, environmental surveyor folks. He grew up really close to where they live in Ivins, and he and most of his siblings, if not all of them, broke out of the Mormon church. And he's taken us over to like Colorado City and Hurricane, which is spelled hurricane, and they say hurricane, which I love doing. But he's driven us around there so that we can see kind of some of the very unorthodox, bizarre stuff out there. I was wondering, like, as you've been there, what's the situation with the lockdown? Is it the same as out here, or are people just? I imagine it's hard to get those Mormons to do stuff that you want.
Yeah, I think that I probably haven't spent enough time around civilization to really know. I've definitely seen a shift over the last like few weeks of just like going to the grocery store and things getting more serious of like what's happening. As far as like stores putting down things on the floor to like stay 6 feet apart in the lines, and I think anyone that's open is just required to have some sort of plan, so they've like put these things in place. I would say it just seems like they're behind other places. I think like things got really intense in big cities, and now rural areas or smaller towns or maybe mid-sized towns right now are what starting to see a shift of like starting to take it more seriously. It just so depends on like where you're at. Like most of my friends are in San Francisco, so like it was really intense really quick there, and like they got put on lockdown, one of the first cities, and so I feel like the area I'm in has definitely been like 3 or 4 weeks like behind what's going on there. But I mean, they actually here just like reopened golf courses. Like there's things that are starting to roll the other way.
Okay.
And that's not necessarily because like, oh, they're over the worst of it. I think it's just they have been able to maintain it or contain it in this area where they haven't had a huge spread. So like there's precautions in place, but they're trying to figure out what they can do.
The big controversy in Encinitas, obviously, is the beach and
the beaches. Yeah.
And Colette and I took a ride down. We had to go get some mail from my sister's house in Encinitas last week, and so we drove down Coast Highway from Oceanside down to Encinitas, and I was just blown away by how many people were this far away from each other, who clearly know each other without masks on. And everybody's up in arms because the beaches are closed, but they can't be trusted to do the thing.
Yeah.
And my question is like, where are the resources to supervise that these two people who are socializing super close to each other live in the same house?
Yeah, and they have
right, like
parking open next to the rail trail that I wonder if it's still open.
I think they've closed a lot of that now.
They closed it. Yeah, it was just absurd. We're like, there's so many people that are just walking around, no mask. Like it's a beautiful day, and everything.
Not paying attention.
You're like, okay.
And those are the people that run for everyone at the beach. Like I've seen, posts about people who are just like up in arms about beaches being closed. Like, why is it not safe to like be outside? And it's kind of the same thing in like the outdoor community of just like, why is it not a good time to just like go be outside? And the point isn't that you can't go be outside. It's just like people aren't doing it responsibly, so they kind of just ruined it for everyone, like. Well, and unfortunately, like all we can really do right now is stay local. So it's like your beach is your outdoor area, and so like not being able to go there does suck. But if you can't do it smartly,
I wonder just like how, because if they open up the beaches again, do they have to open up the public restrooms? Because that's a horrible spot to have open right now. It's like a public restroom.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great point. And like that was kind of the first thing to close in like a lot of the parks and stuff, like when some of the parks remained open, but like none of the restrooms were open or public services. I mean, that's just like the big question, like, how do we expect all that to reopen? Like, just all of a sudden one day, like, everything's going to be open again and we're just going to go back to, I don't know.
You'll probably, I wonder, like, I think about Disneyland, because I love Disneyland.
Yeah.
Something like that. And my friend said it the other day. She was like, when Disneyland opens, we'll know things are changing. And I was like, yeah, that's a really good point.
Because there's just kids snotting all over everything, right?
Seriously.
Disneyland reopens, they probably are going to have to cut capacity, just like concert venues. Like Marty's sister was telling us, she works in music management, that venues will have to like do half of what they can actually hold. And so like, I don't know how you would do that with national parks, or if that would even be necessary, but you can't,
like limiting the number of people that can come in.
Yeah, you can't just let everybody flood in as soon as everything opens. You have to like let them trickle in.
Yeah. I don't know. To me, I'm just so mixed on like, at the point where you're going to like have a concert, like if you're letting 500 people in versus 1,000, like, is that going to make a difference at that point? Like,
they're still going to be hitting on each other and trying to share.
Using the bathrooms together, like, you know.
I know. Colette, how are you doing? Just like, I mean, all of your work and everything you do just like involves that in-person situation, I guess.
I'm having a really hard time. I had 2 really fun jobs lined up that I was meant to start like now, and this first one's definitely canceled. I don't know about the second one yet. It's in July, but I assume it's
so it might be delayed or
probably going to be canceled. But it sucks, and I'm at the start of my career, and to have my form be all about assembly, the future is so uncertain, so it's really stressful, and there's not a lot I can do from where I am right now. I don't want to do anything, but I also, if I come up with something, want to make art if I can. But
I mean, like you said too, just like being in the beginning stages of your career, it's a lot harder to like pivot or take advantage of where you're at, or like get creative with it if you don't have like more of a base to stand on, I guess. But
and I'm not like, oh yeah, I could use a vacation. I'm like, no, I really
I'm ready to do some work.
I want to work. No. So I'm having a hard time, but
I'm
trying to stay optimistic and not be like so depressing about it.
She's been wonderfully creative and productive on little projects in the van.
I mean, I saw you guys' phone holders, which I was very impressed with. What else?
Marty was so stressed about that. He's like, oh, our phones are gonna the cables are gonna pull, and then the outlets are gonna get ruined. And I'm like, you want me to make you like a little pocket? Shut up.
I can be a little
very anal. And what we did, like when we first got here, we were like, great, let's finish all our projects. So like I did the couch that week, and we did the wallpaper, and finished like the trim around the dresser wasn't done, so you could like see into the garage. So we like finished all these little fun projects. And I did those the other day. But what else have I done?
This, dude.
The table. I forgot about
we finally got a Lagoon table.
The coaster table, right?
Yeah. And she like made it with epoxy resin over a bunch of beer coasters, and it's super fun.
How did you pick which coasters were gonna get like a special seat on the table? I know you have a ton of them.
Way too
massive
many.
collection. And so we sat down and we're like, which ones were our favorite places that we went to, and narrowed it down. Or which design on the coaster do we really like?
That's got to be a piece of it, yeah. Are most of them local that ended up, or like from all over?
No, there's ones in here from all over Canada, and there's a couple from Chicago in here, all over California. I think there's a New York one in here somewhere.
I don't know if there's New York or not.
I think I only had one New York one. Yeah, so we kind of covered all the bases.
You needed a bigger table.
I did, but I just have more coasters for next time.
There you go.
It'll be okay.
Yeah.
But it was fun. It was really hard. Resin is no joke. It's hard to work on.
I've heard that. Yeah, I wanted to do, I mean, I guess resin's different than the epoxy.
That's what I got,
right?
Resin.
Is it the same? Okay. Because I thought about doing that on my counter, and I just got nervous that people said it's like kind of hard to get right. So I'll just leave it.
I watched so many videos and I read so much stuff, and I got a really good product because I guess some of them will harden really, really fast, so you have to work quickly. But the stuff I got had like 40-minute like hardening space, so
you didn't feel like totally stressed doing it.
Mix it so it was like correct, because the mixing is like a huge part of it. But I'd read that you could use duct tape or masking tape around the edges, because I wasn't doing something really thick. If you're doing something thick, you want to have like an edging or
yeah,
to like hold everything,
like a wall to hold it in.
Yeah, and I read that masking tape would work if you put masking tape all around the edges. And so I did that, and it started to seep through the masking tape. So I'm like holding it, like resin. I'm like trying to hold the tape together, and I'm like, Marty, you have to get something.
It was a fucking emergency, dude.
A mess. So we lost a bit of resin. So you can feel the coasters in like a couple of spots.
In a few spots.
But we're not coloring on it, so I think it was.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, so
it'll hold your beer. You're fine. You put a laptop on it.
If we decided to, we could add edging and like do another layer.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm sure you could put like a layer on top of it if you felt like you needed to.
I guess with photos, it's a lot easier. You can just kind of pour it on top and paint.
They're so thin. Yeah.
Fall off the edge, but yeah, with these, because I stacked them too, it like doesn't. It's a bit more difficult, but I'm happy with how it turned out.
Good. That's all that matters.
And you've been doing like little bracelets that you're sending to people, right? They're super cute.
Yeah, that's actually how I've been keeping myself busy solo for so long. But I've made a lot of them. This is actually my stack that's ready to go out this week. But yeah, getting back into like my 12-year-old crafts, just, making my heart happy with friendship bracelets and drawing puzzles. That's actually what I would be doing if I like had a house right now. I'd just be doing like puzzles all day, and unfortunately I don't have the space.
You mean like jigsaw puzzles?
Yeah.
I think if I tried to get Marty to do a jigsaw puzzle, he would do it for 5 minutes and then give up.
I actually don't.
They're not for everyone.
Sometimes I'll work on a jigsaw puzzle for 3 hours straight, but I need to be allowed to walk away from it because sometimes I just don't have patience for it.
Yeah.
How is business right now? Tax day got delayed.
Tax day got delayed. All of these small business loan things have just like caused a madhouse, which isn't most of, I guess, why I've been busy, but I just took on additional work kind of over the winter because my goal was to ultimately work more in the winter and like have more time to myself in the summer. So I've just like kind of taken on a couple new clients and buckled down and work more while I'm in isolation. So, I mean, business has been strong. I feel really grateful, I guess, for the profession that I'm in, of just like a pretty essential service for businesses. So, I mean, that relies on all of my businesses still staying open and needing that. But it's been going really well so far. Like my clients are more likely to come to me when this all started and be like, hey, let's talk about spending and expenses and like how we can cut that down rather than like cutting my services first. So it's been busy. Yeah.
Has there been like a lot of protocol changes and new things that you've had to learn or get used to, or?
No, not other than like the SBA loan stuff where it's just been like a total shit show of like no one knows what's going on, no one knows what they're supposed to be. A lot of like pointing fingers at different organizations to like try and get everything organized. So I've been on like the peripheral of trying to help clients navigate that. But that's the only thing that's been impacted or had any effect. Yeah. So
good.
How are your friends and family doing?
They're good. Yeah. I mean, I think everyone is dealing with it in their own way. And I have a lot of friends who just like are our age and have young kids. And I feel like those are just some of the hardest situations. They're trying to still work from home full time and take care of their kids full time and homeschool now and, do everything. So I feel like fortunate, I guess, that I'm the only person I have to take care of, which sounds kind of silly. I would also like to have someone to hang out with right now, but the pressures that I have to deal with right now are very different than I feel like a lot of my friends. So yeah, everyone, some people are in harder situations than others, but everyone's been staying pretty positive.
Do you you strike me as quite an independent person, and you spend a decent amount of time out on your own anyway. Do you feel like the van has sort of insulated you from some of the impacts of or yeah, some of the impacts of this, or do you find that the van has made this more difficult for you in any way?
I think both. Like, I think the difficulties that like a van dweller is running into right now are not more or less than anyone else. They're just different. Like, our struggles are different. And I think what I'm experiencing is pretty similar to like someone who lives in a small town right now. Like, I'm very grateful to not be in a city right now. And I just think that the worst case scenarios are for those that live in really populated areas right now. It's just kind of more intense lockdown than most other places. So I think that being in the van, I've definitely I've done as much as I can to just take myself out of the equation. As far as, I would be terrified to get sick in any capacity. Like, getting sick in a small space is one of the most miserable things ever. So whether that's this or anything else, like, I've always just kind of been scared to get sick. I have definitely like thought through worst case scenario of like, okay, if I do decide to like stay out here and if I do get it, then what? Like, am I going to a local hospital? Like, I think that was my biggest worry when I was deciding to like stay here, was just there was a lot of talk on like the medical system in different areas and what they could handle and what they couldn't. And so for van lifers to like be an additional burden on a small community that might not be able to handle them was like a fair consideration. I don't feel like I'm taking resources from a community that doesn't have them, like, I'm not in that small of a town. But yeah, I don't know where I went with your question or if I answered it.
No, I think do you have a shower in your van?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've never been more thankful to have that shower than now.
The whole thing for us, because we lived in that super tiny van for so long,
mm-hmm.
when we decided to upgrade, we decided to upgrade to the smallest upgrade. It's like, now we can stand up, now we can put our bed sideways, that's all we need. And we talked about it, and we thought about putting a nature set in here, we thought about putting a shower in here, and to both of those things we were like, nah, we don't need that shit, because
as like normal city dwellers, you don't normally need them, right?
Exactly. But here's the deal: if you can't open Dodger Stadium, how can you open 24-hour fitness? Everybody's sweating and breathing and spitting all over everything. And how many people, especially in a city gym, how many people are using each shower stall and each sink every day? It's like, that is a very social environment. And to the extent that social contact is not as much of a thing anymore, like, we've been like, what do we do?
Did you regret that decision, or?
Well, not yet. I mean, we're cush. Like, we're so fortunate, right? We're parked out in front of Patty's house. I can go take a dump anytime I want to. You know what I mean?
It's, for me though, it's made me see the value in having an outdoor shower. Like, having something,
which is what I have,
where we can shower out the back would be awesome. And all those times, we went like on hiking trips a lot, and we would just not really shower for a week, or we would find a campground to shower in. And but now I'm like, ooh, I think that I really want a shower.
How much water you guys have? What's your setup?
We have 2 6-gallon jugs.
Okay. Which is in theory easy to add to, right? Like you
Oh, of
could
course.
always carry more.
Yeah, in the garage. There's plenty of room
Yeah.
if we organize the garage well.
Because I feel like the best option to have is like a hose that goes off of your sink as like a temporary shower, like rarely when you need it, or
Mhm.
something like that, where it doesn't have to be a full setup, but
Yeah.
you can hose yourself down.
Yeah, that's what we had in the mattress. It like screwed on to the sink, but we only used it to clean the dog when he rolled around poop.
Because we're always filling up.
Which is also nice to have. Yeah.
We don't have a hot water system, so it would be a cold shower, which I'm like, oh, right now at least, if we were out somewhere, we're going into summertime, so
Yeah.
a cold shower outside, not so bad.
Yeah, that's what I had in my last van, like off the sink shower setup. It worked great during summer. It was cold during the winter. I do have hot water in my shower now, which is pretty awesome, but it's still not something I would use in the winter, like when it's actually really cold. Like I'm still not gonna stand outside and take a shower even if the water's hot.
Which shower is it that you have? I'll write it down.
I have a Bosch electric water heater, and then it's just like a spray nozzle that comes off out of that essentially.
Is that connected to your sink water system?
No.
It's a separate deal.
Yeah, because I don't want it to be something that's a strain on the power system. So I like the fact that I can just turn it on before I'm going to take a shower, and it heats up, and then I can just shut it off. So it wasn't something I wanted to be on all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I'm looking into the showers. I'm like, which one do we need?
It really sort of did change the idea because, and I'll tell you why in a second. I want to get your opinion on this. I am super proud of you for sitting still through all of this for the last 6 weeks or whatever, because the temptation is certainly there for us right now to go somewhere so that we can be somewhere other than in this very nice suburban neighborhood.
I'm also gonna kick your ass into this podcast.
But like, yeah, we've been
very lucky.
We've been working on this problem for like a week now. We have to get our unemployment shit ironed out before we can do anything.
Yeah.
But up in the Kern River Valley, the National Forest is still open.
Mm-hmm.
And aside from the shower thing, which we can mock up in a couple of days before we get the unemployment thing ironed out, we can do.
Or you could buy like a solar shower, or like there's so many easy options.
So I've been really struggling with the ethics of, is it okay for us to go there for 3 or 4 weeks or whatever? And the difference is, we are, even when we're around people, we are strictly adhering to all of the social distancing stuff. If somebody's walking down the same sidewalk we're on, we either get in the street or cross the street. We're not getting close to people unless we're in the grocery store with masks on. But since I have an alternative, I would feel kind of selfish going out to the Kern River Valley right now, even though I probably ought to be able to practice social distancing there because there aren't going to be many people there, and it's legal because it's open, What do you think about that?
I think that there's a really fine line between thinking you're the exception to the rule and also being a smart, intelligent person that can think for yourself. So, I think we're reaching a point where this is going to be a little controversial, and it's hard to say anything without someone that's going to come at you right now. But I think that we literally just shut our country down for a month, and for good reason. I 100% believe that social distancing and doing all the things was the right thing. I think that it's really important to make a distinction between self-quarantining and social distancing. You should quarantine if you believe that there's any possibility that you've come into contact with it. And if you haven't, you don't need to stay at home 100% of the time for 2 weeks. Yes, you should social distance and you should be safe. And I think there was just such a big blanket that got put over the country because we didn't know what was happening. And like, if we're still not able to start figuring out what's going on and getting it under control, you know, going forward, then there's just a different kind of problem. But I think that's just the hard part, right? Like, if everyone in LA was to go out to the Kern River Valley, like, that would be a problem. But at the same time, like, if you're able to go out there for 2 weeks and do it responsibly, meaning you're not stopping in small towns, you're not like taking risks of bringing something with you and stopping, you know, in a local grocery store and doing unnecessary things. I also kind of feel like there's no reason why you shouldn't go, you know, like, if you're able to go, be out there and like stock up and spend 2 weeks out in the forest where you're not coming into contact with anyone, meaning that you're coming into contact with less people than you are where you're at now. Like, why shouldn't that be allowed? But I just think it's a hard line to draw between telling some people they can do that and some people they can't. Like, I don't know how to do that, you know?
That was the big sort of modifier, that because I have a bunch of friends who've been like very loudly complaining about the fact that they can't surf and that they can't go to the beach and stuff. But the thing that struck me when we were driving down Coast Highway last week is that not only did we see a totally unprecedented, inordinate number of people biking and walking around.
I wish they did that when we were open. Like, people are like, oh.
It's super interesting. I feel like people are outside a lot more right now because you can't go get drunk at brunch, and you can't go take the kids to the mall. Like, that stuff is all closed. And so I feel like everybody is like, let's go for a walk, let's go for a run, let's go for a bike. But the thing that really hit me was there were tons of people that I saw loading bicycles out of vehicles. And I have this massive localism streak to me, because I've come up in the surf community where there are a bunch of people who are like, this is my wave, you can't surf here. And it's like, fuck you, man, this is the ocean, you know? But on the other hand, this is a very rare occurrence where I sort of feel like if you can't walk there, you know, maybe you shouldn't go there, because it was very clear to me by the load of people that were on the coast. And of course, it's the most beautiful place to go and walk and bike. But it was very obvious with the number of people that were out that they had not gotten there on their feet or on their bicycles from their houses, you know?
Yeah.
They all gravitated there. And that's a huge challenge for those coastal communities that are the most attractive places to be, because they're going to be the places that are going to have a real hard time enforcing social distancing if and when they open back up.
Yeah. And that's the same thing with like the Bishops and the Moabs of the world, of why they got so intense so fast, of just like, that's where everyone wanted to go when this started, because they had a bunch of time on their hands so they could get away. And from a small community, you know, that's risky for them. And same way, like you said, like coastal towns are kind of in the same situation of, if everyone floods to that coastal town because they don't have anything better to do and it's nice to go to the beach, then it's just bringing on a whole different list of issues.
Yeah. Do you feel like you've seen an additional amount of mountain biking traffic? Because if you've been there 6 weeks, you've been there way before Utah closed down.
Yeah, the area I am in right now is close to like a smaller state park, and like before this started, there was like literally no one here ever. And it's definitely it's not a crowded area ever. Like, I just don't think it's the most popular place to go in all of this area. So I haven't seen a huge flood of like people. There's a different BLM area that I did spend like a long weekend in, and you know, it's a huge area, tons of places to camp, and there was tons of RVers and vans out there, and it was a weekend, so like I did see a lot more people like on mountain bike trails when I was over there, and that's kind of one of the reasons why I keep going back over here, just because it is less crowded. but by no means was it at a point where it felt unsafe or like all those people couldn't be out there and do what they were doing and that wasn't okay. Like it was totally fine.
Good.
I don't know. I'm guessing though that this area would be way more packed and crowded if like none of this was going on. Like this is their high season, probably like springtime, before it gets too hot.
Huh. But it's also kind of remote. Like, I mean, the biggest city I can think around there would be like, well, Zion, which nobody's going to right now, or then like St. George or something. And St. George, I think, is still probably not even 100,000 people. Maybe. Yeah, I don't know.
It might be almost that big. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the biggest town in the area.
Yeah. So I guess you would, in order to have a lot of people, you would need like actual vacationers out there.
Yeah. And I think that's just...
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think what you were talking about, though, is just part of the problem of why a lot of van dwellers feel so displaced is because people are kind of being told to like stay local to where you're from. And that just means kind of different things for us. So like, where is it okay to be, I guess?
Yeah. Well, I've been sort of following this saga. This guy on YouTube was with some people and he keeps getting like sort of hassled in Scotland. And they actually, basically they were getting trolled so hard on Facebook and YouTube that they found a farm to go to in England and they got out of Scotland. And I've heard a couple of rumors. I don't know anybody personally that I've talked to who's been hassled in a van or whatever. But yeah, that's the thing. We were actually thinking about going up near the Virgin River or something like that, which goes through northern Arizona and southern Utah. But then I heard all of that and I was like, I'm going to stay somewhere where my California license plate is in the right state, I think, if I do.
Yeah, and like that's what I said earlier, like that's the same thing I'm stressed about going into town because I've heard the same stories, but thankfully I haven't actually seen any of that animosity in town. But
good.
I don't know. I think it depends on the area, really.
Cool.
But I do know a lot of van lifers who were just really scared, like when all of this started, and just like basically went into hiding because they were scared to say what they were doing, and if they weren't going home, that they were getting thrown a lot of shade for not going home when they should. And I think that was really unfair. And I think there was just, ultimately a lot of scared people in the world that are trying to tell everyone what to do, which isn't, maybe the best thing. But I think every van lifer I know that's decided to like shelter in place and stay where they are, whether that's in a group or solo, like now feels like I made the best decision I could have. Like this was the safest thing for myself and for anyone else.
Yeah.
And obviously that's just kind of scary now thinking about like how long is this going to last? Like how long can we do this for?
And I know a lot of people, have either done exactly what we're doing or something similar to this. Like I know there's this guy who lives in Alabama. We're going to get on the podcast soon. Who we've been passing him in the country and never actually been in the same place at the same time. And this gives us an opportunity to interview people who are super far away. But I think he's got a piece of property in Alabama, but he works in New England a decent amount. And so he's sort of invited, very few number of people, but like some vans to come and be there. And, Jared's up at outside of Mark's shop up in Portland.
Right.
With some other people. And so it's a bizarre world, man. That shower is just like the tip of the iceberg in terms of new considerations about, what is the propriety of us traveling into the future and stuff. I feel like everything's sort of in flux and the answers to those questions are just not available.
I know it's been hard. Obviously everyone's just dealing with everything being unknown, but to make any decisions with so much uncertainty is definitely really tough. Like, how are you guys feeling right now just about like the longer term and what you want to do?
I would at a certain point where things were open enough but still closed down too much for us to return to our former sort of iteration of van life. And I'm just thinking about this now. It's a great question. There's a point in the recovery to like fully open normalcy. There's a point in there where I would feel like we're imposing on Colette's mother. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Right now, she can't socialize and she likes us. You know what I mean? And it's really convenient for us to have access to her facilities, you know? And because we have the van, we can stay out of her hair. It's not like we're living in her house.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, I could see somewhere on the arc where the gyms aren't open, but she gets to start going back to her friends' houses for game night and trivia and dating or whatever. And I would feel like I was in her way. Aside from that, you know, we did just finish this van right before all of this happened. And so we're not able to experience the romantic van life that everybody sees on Instagram. But for me to be pissed off about that would be wildly out of context and super selfish right now, right?
Yeah.
So I'm happy. I'm super happy with that. And having low overhead is a huge thing, you know? I was paying all utilities and everything included for my last apartment. I think I was paying about $17.50 or so. And I still have the mattress and I still have a payment on that. But that and this together are way lower than that. And so it's like low overhead is epic.
I know. I do feel like that is one area where we really are at an advantage of, you know, just like so many people losing their jobs and just like really shitty things happening, to be in a position where you are able to have low overhead is kind of a huge privilege right now. And I definitely don't take that for granted. I've also seen, I think, other people making the jump into van life that were maybe previously considering it in order to try and take advantage of that sort of situation of cutting out rent or keeping their expenses low and whatever's going on in their life.
Where are you at with that? I know you've been sort of, or last time we talked about it, I think that you were didn't anticipate living in a van forever, and you're sort of looking for the place that you wanted to land or whatever. Is this going to accelerate that decision, or?
It actually might. Like, it's something I've thought about a lot. And that's something that I was planning on originally kind of trying to do by the end of this year. And I've definitely been thinking about doing that sooner rather than later, because like the summer I had planned is probably not going to happen. So it is, and it's not like totally changing what I wanted. Like, that's ultimately always what I wanted. I'm not going from like saying I wanted to live in a van to now like, oh, I want to buy a house. Like, that's always what I wanted eventually. But I've definitely taken steps towards trying to make that more of a reality sooner rather than later. And I think it's an interesting time to like, I'm kind of like figuring out maybe like how I can go spend the summer in like one or two places that I want to look at real estate and maybe live eventually, rather than spending the summer traveling. So I've definitely been looking into that a lot more seriously than I would have been otherwise.
If you are busy right now with work, and if you're planning on buying land or a house soon, this might work out kind of well for you, dude. Because
rates are lower than they've ever been.
And property values are going to probably plummet unless we do have some sort of magical return to normalcy.
Yeah. I know obviously another thing I've definitely considered, just like it would be a good time to buy. And I'm really interested to see what real estate does in the next 3 months. Like, if we're not able to just turn the economy back on in the next 30 days, like it really is going to be a slow roll back. And unfortunately, you know, that means potentially good thing for buyers and not great things for sellers. But you're right, like might not be a bad time to buy. So
Yeah.
if that's something I can take advantage of, I definitely consider it.
So, one of the other things, and just back to me and my my morose outlook on, bustling city life, and whether we're going to return to that in the way that we knew it ever, if ever, and certainly, it's going to be a little while. One of the things that's been really interesting to me is sort of trying to predict what cultural changes are going to happen. I've been doing this thing with friends. We've been getting drunk together at a distance or whatever, over Zoom or FaceTime or house party or whatever. And to the extent that a bunch of people are doing what you've been doing, that they've never even learned to try to do before, which is telework, right? Telecommute. I see that as having a huge environmental and congestion benefit if everybody learns to telework right now and then doesn't go back to the office except when they have to in the future. The flip side of that coin to me is, if this is going to be a very gradual reintroduction of what our previous culture looked like, and people are in cities are going to have to stay separated from each other and wear masks and all of this, I'm scared that there's going to be like a second white flight, and like everybody gets away from urban cores and more suburban development and all of that. And so my question at the end of that giant filibuster is this going to impact, how has it changed the way that you're thinking about where you're going to go? You were probably headed somewhere pretty small anyway, right?
It hasn't changed my consideration of where I'm going at all. I do agree that I think, over the last several decades, there's been a migration towards bigger cities. I think that there will inevitably be a little bit of an opposite effect after this, of people looking to potentially get away. I think coming from the Bay Area and just like the startup world in that area, I think that we'll see a lot of companies either embrace the idea of remote work culture or just kind of fully opposite, force people back into their office at the end of the day. I think over the last 5 years, we've seen a huge migration of companies leave Silicon Valley just because they can cut costs and go somewhere else. And I think this will reinforce a lot of that, just with the labor force of being able to hire remote workers from anywhere that can do the job, rather than paying the exorbitant salaries that people pay in the Silicon Valley. I have one client who is in the Bay Area, and they're a pretty large company, and they're fully working from home right now. They were supposed to move into a new office building in March and weren't able to do that, but have fully kind of embraced the idea that they're probably going to be working from home for the rest of this year, and have made remote hires that they wouldn't have made otherwise. They've been hiring people in different states because they feel like that's the right person for the job, rather than that's the person that's local, because that's not as big of a consideration right now.
Interesting.
That's great. So I do think that we'll see a shift in that. And I think you brought up, the environmental impact of that could be huge. And I hope that might be more of a consideration in people's minds as they start to approach some of those topics. But yeah, I don't know. I think that remote work has been growing in popularity already, and that this will definitely help reinforce some of that.
Yeah. Well, do you have anything else? You got anything you want to tell us, Megan?
I mean, not really. It's nice to see some faces.
Yeah, it's good to catch up with you. I've been really, we've done this is our third one of these over Zoom.
Okay.
And we haven't interviewed anybody over Zoom yet that we haven't already had on the podcast.
Yeah.
I just sort of wanted to ease into it with people that I know I already like, And so, yeah,
because you don't know what you're getting into.
Yeah, and it's been really a little bit self-indulgent, but it's been so good to see all these people that I love that I can't hang out with and stuff, man.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting balance, just like in our culture right now, like rediscovering connection with people over things like Zoom and technology, and just like also, I don't know, I think we're seeing just a lot of the really good things that technology has brought into our lives, and also like a lot of the really bad things of just like being stuck in your house and on your phone all day is like also not healthy, but like having the ability to like connect with someone like that almost feels like it's in person,
Right.
you know, it's huge, and just like kind of shows how far we've come. But
I haven't had this impulse since I was 12. I've thought about getting a video game console.
I'm not sure that's the healthiest habit to kick off right now.
He doesn't even like games. Like, I'm like, you're not going to be patient enough to play a video game.
It doesn't sound like you can sit still.
I feel like I'm missing a huge part of our culture, you know, and this is the moment where everybody's doing it.
Last week, he's like, did you know that video games are really expensive? I'm like, yeah.
They're like $60 a piece, dude. I had no idea.
Apparently there's a huge surge in like in-app, like in-game purchases. You know how like you buy stuff in all the video games now? I don't know how they work. I also don't know what TikTok is. Like apparently that's a thing now. I'm a little behind on all these things, so I don't know.
I don't really. I downloaded it on my phone.
Okay.
And I think I made one video.
Did you?
I think it's,
How are you unsure about that?
I can't remember. I clearly didn't trend or go viral.
Yeah, I haven't
would have found out about it. So in what's cool.
I would have seen myself reposted on Instagram because I am on that all fucking day right now.
Yeah. I know. I think it's interesting. Like I've talked to a few friends who like I love, but I don't talk to that often, and I've talked to more recently, and like we've just kind of said like if anything good comes of this situation, like I hope it's the fact that like we continue to talk more. Like I think this time is allowing us more time to like spend to be intentional with, and I think it's interesting to see how different people are spending that time, but I hope that can also lead to more intentional lifestyles.
Yeah,
I hope so too. If we could just get over people who don't know what they're talking about telling each other what to do.
Yeah, that's been like the theme of my week. I just like decided I was going to fully get over that hump of like being scared of what other people think and telling me that I'm doing the wrong thing, and you know, scared to post where I'm at because someone's going to like tell me to go home. Or
have you encountered that? Have you been trolled on the internet, or like friends and family, have they told you that you shouldn't be doing what you're doing?
I have friends who are doing the same thing that I am that have been told that. You know, like friends who have larger followings than I have and are told by random people on the internet, things like that. So I think I'm taking that way too personally, and I haven't actually had any of that happen to me. So yeah, just be a little more confident in my own decisions and the fact that I think I'm making the right decisions. So.
Well, I think you're doing a great job.
Thanks.
All right, we'll wrap it up there. Thank you for doing this. This was fun. It's good.
Yeah, you too. Nice to see you guys.
Hopefully we'll talk soon.
Sounds good. Bye.
Bye.
All right, guys, we did it. That was episode 57 of From the Van. It's a podcast from my van. The last 3 episodes, we've caught up with people who have previously been on the podcast. My goal for next week is to have somebody or somebodies new who have never been on the podcast before. One of the wonderful things about this lockdown is that it's taught me that while I don't totally love the format and the file quality relative to what I would get if somebody were visiting with me in my van while we podcast, it does mean that I can podcast with people who are thousands of miles away. So if you have any suggestions of who you would want to hear on the podcast, or maybe you want to be on it, hit me up, let me know. We'll see you next week with another episode of From the Van.